So yes, welcome to another Off-World Live Masterclass. This time we've got an awesome speaker, but I just want to give a couple things about our masterclass in general. So yeah, we aim to make these happen at least once or twice a month, or every few weeks if we can. We just invite people to come on and share awesome things they're doing, not only with the Off-World Live toolkit, but everything around it. Awesome other things you can do just in Unreal or in the world of real-time animation. We aim to get really interesting artists and developers, also musicians who try their hand at visual stuff. We welcome people in to just share some knowledge with everyone. So we have a playlist on our YouTube of our past masterclasses if you want to check them out. We've already had some awesome stuff on. Yeah, if you want to see what else we've covered, the other amazing people we've had on there. We've had interactive Niagara systems. We had Mega Steak Man break down how he uses mocap to animate his scenes. He animated a whole scene in an hour, made a little skit. That was really fun. And we've had VTubers like Woody and Gloria the Animator and Riku VR showing awesome kind of Twitch interactivity and other cool sort of avatar-based stuff. This is streamed on the Discord, also on YouTube and Twitch. You might find you get different quality from different streams, so it's worth checking those out. And you can feel free to comment on any of those with questions coming in. We open this out to open discussion. That's the aim of it being live, so we love the idea of people being able to butt in with questions. You guys will be muted, but if you have a question comment-wise, I will butt in and ask Thegn about that. Also, there'll be a bit more of an open Q&A at the end. I'll try and flip the permissions in the Discord. If you want to discuss some stuff, we'll be here to chat about stuff at the end. So there'll also be a re-upload after this is finished, in case you get any connection drops or anything like that. We'll have a nice high quality re-upload that'll be on the YouTube forever after that. So, awesome to introduce Thegn this time. You might have seen Thegn from the promo videos before, and he's had this amazing game that he's been developing. He's been developing this game called Heavy as Stone. You can follow it on his Twitter and Instagram, and he's been doing it as a solo dev. So he's been learning Unreal as he goes along, solo, and he's been very systematic about it, but also left room for a lot of creativity and going with the flow along the way. So it kind of started out with building levels and then spiraled into making mechanics, and he's just got an amazing story of how he's tackled the task of being a solo dev. It's really, really cool. So he's got a whole load of experience and tips that he's learned along the way, and quite a cool story of how they found out this stuff. So this would be awesome for if you're looking at like learning some Unreal stuff, or if you're literally looking at taking on some solo dev yourself. Yeah, this could be super cool if you're sort of getting overwhelmed with like learning a lot of stuff. Thegn will have loads of tips on that stuff. So I think I will pass on now. Yeah, Thegn, how are you doing? Let me introduce you.
Hey, hello.
Hello.
Thank you for that lovely intro. So yeah, I'm Thegn, AKA Jøy. I'm a musician. I've been making music for over 15 years maybe, and I've been doing all sorts of digital art since I was maybe 10. I was doing like flash animations and like stick figure animations, and I even tried my hand at ActionScript back then, and I've just always kind of had an interest in digital design and art, and one thing led to another, and I found I can do 3D art, and it's kind of a thing I got into early on, and yeah, now I'm here. So I'll talk a little bit about that journey a little bit later on, and let's get started. So this next hour and a bit, I think, is going to be about solo dev in specifically Unreal Engine, and how solo dev can be daunting at first, you got to learn an entire software like Unreal Engine, and anybody who's opened it for the first time and not had the chance to learn all of it, that can seem like a pretty Herculean task. But it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to feel like that. So that's what I want to talk about. And that's going to involve how to hone in your workflow, and overcome the many hurdles of solo game development. So it's going to be in roughly 3 parts. Or 4, I guess I've written here. Part 1 is going to be an intro, and I'll talk about why do you solo dev? That seems, you complain about it a lot. It seems torturous. And the other question I get a lot from people is how, and so we'll talk about what that means. Part 2, I'll go into how to plan as a solo dev, and how to plan as somebody getting into Unreal Engine for the first time and game development for the first time. And that's going to involve doing your research, setting goals, maintaining scope, and learning your flow, which works for you. Then part 3, I'm going to go into the execution of it, and so that's specifically in Unreal. So I'll open up Unreal, and I'll open up my project, and we'll have a look at all the different disciplines, or all the different facets of game development, and how to get started in each of those. Or at least how I got started, like when I finally figured this thing out for each specific discipline, that's when it clicked for me, and I was able to kind of snowball and it kind of extrapolate. That's a word that'll come up later. So we'll be breaking down, like I said, those in each individual thing for those disciplines, and that'll lead us on our path to finishing the vertical slice of our game, also known as a prototype, something which contains a little bit of everything that you intend to have in your complete and finished game or project even. And then at the end, if we have time, and if anybody has questions, or just wants to have a dialogue on anything, I'm open to answering any questions about both my own project and about the methods that I've gone over, just anything you found interesting. So yeah, if you have any questions, just think that up. So continuing. So part 1, intro. Do these slides look daunting, says the Comic Sans font? Well, let's take it step by step. Talk a little bit about yourself. Okay, so I told you a little bit about myself, and I'll tell you a little bit more. So when I was 15, me and my friend downloaded UDK, Unreal Development Kit. That was when it was Unreal 3. And so that was like 12 years ago. And we tried to make like a horror game, which oddly enough is really similar to Layers of Fear, like the concept. But we were working on this much earlier than that. Yeah, that's what I'm about to do. Sorry. It was a horror game, and he was going to handle the code, and I was going to handle the 3D. And we even had a couple student concept artists that wanted to like use the project for their schoolwork as well. So they even got some cool concept art and everything done for that. But I think we were not. It was both of us. This is our first project, and it was probably way over ambitious. Even though looking back, it may not have been a super ambitious idea for us, for people who had never touched a game engine before, and who I had very small amount of 3D knowledge. I knew how to use Maya or 3ds or Blender or whatever I was using at the time, just a little bit, and he knew how to code a little bit of C and C++, and that project was just supposed to be a walk around and collect things, and the story would progress, and there'd be hauntings in the house. It was like a all set in one house, but then we had the idea to add in this forest, and the scope just kept getting bigger and bigger. We wanted to be able to go into the forest, and then, oh, what if we had like a proper storyline and everything instead of just collecting items? And it just we did a lot more planning than we did making. And I think that's kind of the first pitfall that a lot of people get into when they think like, oh, I'm going to get into game dev, I'm going to get into game design, and they get this grand idea, So we'll talk a little bit about that, that there is a way for that to work, and next slide will explain that. So moving on from that project fell apart. We just kind of stopped working on it. I ended up moving to Japan for a year in 2015, and so I didn't have a computer for about half that year. And when I finally did get a computer, it wasn't that strong, but I did want to get back into learning code, so I did learn C++, just the basics of it, and on that computer. And I did kind of get into Unreal 4 for the first time, having only had experience in UDK. And I got into Unreal 4 on that computer, just doing really simple stuff, really not visually appealing. That was another idea that it wasn't super ambitious, but it was probably a little bit more planned. Like I had more of a plan than I did a plan to actually make it. Like I had an idea for this game, but not a plan to actually execute it properly. And I got hung up on the littlest things that I probably shouldn't have. I probably should have moved on and modified the plan so that the game was a little bit different and it was in a way that was actually achievable, but I didn't. And that project fell apart as well. But also I moved back from Japan to Canada, my native country, and I just never picked up that project again. But come 2017, I got another hankering for wanting to try my hand at game dev. And so I thought, this time I'm not going to make a game. I'm not going to plan a game. I'm just going to make some room, some office, maybe set in the early 1900s. And in fact, that folder was called Untitled 1920s Project or something like that. And I was working on an art style. I had really simple, low poly kind of stuff. And I didn't have a plan for it. I just wanted to make a scene and finish a scene, and I did that. I finished the scene. I finished this office, and then I thought, I kind of want to walk around it now, not just fly around in like the spectator camera in Unreal Engine. So I learned how to properly code in C++, which I had learned while I was in Japan. I took a tutorial how to code in C++ character movement, and that's it. I just coded that. Now I can walk around my little office that I made. Cool. That's cool. I made a second room, I put a door, and I thought, I'm going to need to add interactivity to open the door. And that was back in like 2019 when I started doing that. So I'd been kind of just playing around with art for about a year and a half, and then started adding a little bit of basic mechanics to it. And fast forward to now, and don't worry, I'll go back over that part that I'm skipping here, but what you're about to see may shock and surprise you, or maybe that's not exactly the phrase I was looking for, but what you're about to see is the culmination of that slippery slope that happened when I back in 2019 or 2018 when it started happening. So that's Heavy as Stone. That's what Untitled 1920s Project became. And the rest of this talk and the rest of these slides is going to describe the processes and things that I've learned from making that little 3D office in Unreal Engine to now having a nearly complete prototype and being on the cusp of entering alpha for this project. So there's a few questions here. I'm going to answer them as I play the game, probably, or go more into depth in the answer here. Why this art style? The art style is simple. It's not quite low poly, but it's really easy. It's not using PBR. It's using fully rough materials. And don't worry if you don't understand exactly what that means. I'm just saying it's a really simple art style because I'm one person. I'm not going to spend all this time authoring really complicated looking materials. I decided that right off the bat I'd make a simple art style which I can replicate for many different assets. Why dolls? That's not going to make any sense if you've never seen any clips from my game. So let's, without further ado, the screen is black. That's okay. There you go. All right, Jasper, you can see that? It's visible. Alright, cool. Let's start a new game. Warning, create new save file failed. This already exists because we did a test earlier and I already created a save file. So I'm gonna go through this prototype level pretty quickly. I'm not gonna stop. I'm not gonna, you know, stop to smell the flowers. But that's only because I haven't implemented smell yet. So yeah, we're just gonna kind of go right through it, and I'm just gonna talk about stuff. This outdoor area took it's been through a lot of iterations. This is quite a recent iteration, but I don't know where that door went. That disappeared yesterday, and I just haven't had time to put it back. So as you can see, there's a little hole in the ground there. Don't worry about it. Yes, you're going to see a lot of work in progress stuff, because I work on this game every day, and that included yesterday, included the day before, you know, right up to this workshop that we're having now. So you're going to see some stuff that is really like, I'll leave it for later, kind of, is the point that it's at. So why dolls? Why am I a doll? Why is he a doll? Like I said in the slide, skill issue. I cannot model humans. I cannot model people. I'm not very good at it. I didn't want to learn it. I didn't like binding skin. I don't like any of that. I'm getting better at it now, but I kind of like my dolls now, so I wrote it into the concept of the game, and the concept is that we are humans, but your character has a sort of a mental affliction, which a lot of other people in the setting also have, but the symptoms are all kind of a little bit different, and one of the symptoms that is unique to the main character is that he sees people as dolls, a sort of delusion. And that's justified now by the story, and that's that. I think it looks okay. So, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in particular a little bit later. But yeah, that's why dolls. I don't want to animate people. So, unfortunately no door, but we'll open a door later, it's fine. You interact with things, and your character will respond to them. So I've just got a Niagara effect which appears on some of those things. Some of them can give you notes in your notebook. For example, this one. And if we open up the notebook, that note is now appeared in here, and we can go back and check it. So this is all has to do with the storyline of the game. So we're looking for these scenes. So let's head inside and see if we can find one of those scenes. If you're not using headphones to watch this stream, I would suggest, just so that you can hear the dynamic audio that I've programmed. If you are wearing headphones, then you might have heard this radiator here. Becomes muffled when you're around a corner. It's still audible, but it is receiving a low-pass filter. And all of my sounds, well, not all of them, almost all of them react in this way. And it's a custom system that I built using Fmod. So we got a lot of items here, so I'll go and pick them up. We gotta equip the shotgun first, and our mental health medication, and our physical health medication, and the stronger one as well. So, there is a little bit of combat in this game, but it's not the primary focus. Rest in peace, headphone users. It wasn't that loud. This was a fun animation to get right. That took a really long time to do. But it had so many things that I didn't know how to do in it. Just the thought of like learning to do that reload animation, I knew how much value was in it. I knew it was going to take a long time, but I'm much more knowledgeable for it. So sometimes it's good to challenge yourself, even though you know that it's going to be costly in terms of time. So you can drink some of that. Can drink some of that. Alright, I'm not going to eat this right now. This is a fragment of brain, which I'll collect. I can't get in here. If you're afraid to go into a room in ajar doors, this took me 2 or 3 tries to get right. So I had to refactor, reprogram, reanimate. It works for if the doorknob's on the left or the right, or if you're on the inside or the outside of the room. There's unique animations for all occasions, as well as closing a door when you're facing it, and then closing a door when you're on the other side. There's a lot of animations put into the doors here. That whole system took me a very, very long time to do, but again, it's something that I wanted to do. I wanted to learn how to do. So I chose to do it. So on the slide before I started, one of the lines was why solo dev, and I want to learn. That's what I'm doing. I'm building a game while I do it, but most of what I do is to challenge myself and to prove to myself maybe in a way that I can learn to do these things and that I can do them, and all the while making kind of like my dream project. Instead of just doing kind of one-off mechanics, I'm doing it in a way that it all goes together into one project, and in the end you get a product, you get a game. Oh, there's that bug. That's a new bug. I don't know what causes that. I pick up an item and it unequips everything. Luckily it is a harmless bug. So you can have your light on your hip. That was another thing that took me a long time to get right. I did it 2 or 3 tries. So the light turned off for some reason. There's something after me now, that's not good. So, hold on. I know I made it, but it still scares me a little bit, so. Actually, you know what, if I turn on the light, oh my god, Jesus. Okay, yeah. I was gonna say, if you turn on the light, it goes away. So yeah, there's that, and now we're afflicted with nyctophobia. So those things are going to appear a lot more often when we're in the dark. So let's stay out of the dark, except for this room. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna get rid of it. So some of the UI, some more of the UI. If I study nyctophobia using that brain fragment we found earlier, I get some adaptations which help counteract those shadows when this is active. So when this is active, we encounter shadows, but I also get a longer light burn rate. So, but I don't want to encounter the shadows, and I'm trying to show you some of the mechanics and stuff that we got going on. So I will disable it. Now that it's studied, I'm able to disable and enable that particular affliction freely. Moving on. Now we did get the hammer. I could go upstairs and break that lock in the room up in the hallway, but that's far away, and I just want to get to the end of this. So this is a fun little project. This little hanging tarp thing. It's kind of two fun little projects in one. One was getting a blurred effect. As you can see, the things behind it is a little bit blurred. The other part of the project was getting it to react naturally to the player. And sound, I guess, was also a little bit of a difficult thing to get right, but this was more of like a passion project, this particular thing. I since quite a long time ago, I wanted hanging tarps that blur everything on the other side that you have to walk through. So one day I got bored, I didn't really have anything up on the schedule. Kind of put it together and it turned out pretty good. As you can see, it interacts with other objects as well, as it's a physics actor. It's actually got a skeletal mesh. It's like 3 bones, I think. And those bones have the physics asset has just like a long horizontal stick for each bone going across. So it's just got an invisible sticks going across. So the one right here collides with this. I set this particular locker to collide with physics actors. So that's what caused that. On my Twitter, I've got a bit more of an in-depth expose on that. So. I didn't have time to enable this, unfortunately, so if you're interested in seeing this thing turn on, and these pins go up, and the motors over there spin, and this is animated as well. These are all animated. If you're interested in seeing that, you can see the video of it on my YouTube and Twitter, which we can link a little bit later. This room was built fairly recently, and I just wanted to kind of get a little bit more environment art practice, and I wanted to make a really complicated mesh like this. It took me about a week. Just kind of like a hero piece or a main piece. So I got one last thing to show you guys. Let me get a checkpoint here, actually. If you've ever played Dark Souls, this is very similar to the bonfire. You'll respawn here when you die, and any enemy you didn't kill will come back to life. Speaking of enemies, we can focus our vision, which will dispel hallucinations, and zoom, but we muffle our sound. Or I can hold my breath. See if we can hear him running around over there. I don't know where he went. All useless sounds will fade out while you're holding your breath. Only important sounds remain. Cannot hear him. I think he went in here. I don't want to run out of breath. Oh, is he glitched in here? Perfect. 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 I knew this would happen. I knew this would happen. Come on, buddy. Come on, buddy. We'll fight here. That's funny. Glitching out the stream. Alright, so... okay, he didn't get back up, which means I've won the fight. He's given up, he's too tired. I can execute him, or I can leave him here, but as I said, if I die, or if I go back to one of those yellow signs on the wall, this guy also heals, comes back to life, respawns right where he was, and, yeah, but I think I'll be a murderer today. Just so we can see the ragdoll. Let me step on him. Just to end this part of the clip. Alright, there we go. All right. So that's where my project's at right now. I'm still working on combat, so what you just saw, obviously, is very work in progress. So let's get to the how. Just give me 1 second. All right. So yeah, why this art style? I went over that. Why dolls? Why psychedelic exploration focused investigative horror? I like all of those things. Why anything? I want to. That's why. So the how. A lot of people ask me like, how do you do this? And I never really know exactly what they mean. Gotta open Unreal. Okay, while Unreal is opening. So sometimes I think like, how do I stay focused on this project for so long? Like I said, I started it back in like 2019. And sure, there's patience, understanding, passion, and that's understanding of like what needs to be done. Like having a plan, I guess. Passion, having control over ambition, not getting over ambitious, and manageable workflow for learning things that you don't know how to do. How do I not get discouraged? Perhaps is the other meaning of that. You know, like we were talking about earlier, Unreal can be daunting. Game dev can be really daunting. Being realistic, adapting. Like I said, sure, maybe I wanted to have real humans in the game at one point, but when I learned that making real human models and animating them is not something I like to do, I adapted, and now it's a game about dolls, or people who are viewed as dolls. And to trust in your own ability to do what you want to do, and to do those things. Trust in your ability to adapt. Trust in your ability to not get overly ambitious. Just be self-aware of what you're getting yourself into. And how do I learn all this stuff? Perspective. So watching a ton of seminars, workshops, reading a lot of articles, and like, I'm not even talking about like learning how to do it like tutorials, but just like learning from people about all kinds of things regarding game development and Unreal Engine and even Unity. I don't like Unity. I used it for one project back when I worked at a game company in Japan, and I don't like it, but learning to use it at least a little bit, learning why you don't like it, is valuable information. It's just that. It's information. It's intel. That's it. And of course I've used a ton of different 3D software, but Maya is the one for me. I use Blender for a few select things, but you know I don't like ZBrush, and that's valuable information. Step by step, so don't bite off more than you can chew. In fact, learn on a need-to-know basis and a want-to-know basis, and that's kind of what we'll get into next. But first, planning. This is all you need to do to either make a game or get a new hobby. Step 1, come up with a grand game concept. Think big, open world, all unique NPCs, in-depth crafting systems, infinite replayability, maybe even online MMO, and insert popular game mechanic from recent viral video game here. Step 2, purchase some asset packs, maybe copy a tutorial or two until it's passable for the next step. Step 3, make a trailer for your magnificent game. This is the most important step. Don't forget the release date set for next month. Step 4, spam the trailer on Reddit and all of your favorite Discord channels. Step 5, look up some more tutorials because release date's only a month away and you've only got maybe a small prototype of downloaded mechanics and you haven't actually done anything yourself. Step 6, realize how difficult and time consuming this is actually going to be to do some of this yourself. Step 7, abandon the project. Congratulations. Okay, planning for real this time. As a solo developer, you are everything and everyone. You are a researcher, you're a scheduler, you're a planner, you're a programmer, you're a modeler, you're a level designer, you're a texture designer, you're a shader author, you're a UI artist, you're a sound designer, you're a tester, and probably more of that, and you're definitely in way over your head. Or are you? Yes, you are. So what can we do about it? Step 1, take stock of your current skills. Step 2, start with that. And hey, if you don't have any skills regarding game development, that's okay. Start with one that most interests you. If it's 3D modeling, take a course in 3D modeling, watch some tutorials, download Blender, it's free. Just get into one of the different disciplines that you see on the left here, the one that interests you the most, and just get a little bit good at that one. Let's say you can 3D model. Build a level. Pick an art style that you can achieve and build a small one-room scene in your 3D software. Like, I don't know, maybe a 1920s office. Or maybe in another example, you can program in C++. Code a simple mechanic that you like. Do you like moving in first person, or do you like moving from top down? Code that. You don't need a model for it. You don't need animations for it. You don't need to learn how to do any of that stuff. Move a square, a cube around a level using the arrow keys or WASD or your mouse, whatever you want to do. There's a ton of tutorials for this very basic stuff. And if you know C++, even better. If you don't, blueprints. Blueprints are lovely. I think anybody should also learn blueprints, even if you want to program your game in C++. Blueprints are handy, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But yeah, just code something if that's what you're interested in. Yeah, learn some of the Unreal API for reading input. Have that call a function on the character's movement. Just keep it simple. And note that I didn't say that you need to perfect the lighting in Unreal. You need to get really good at lighting in Unreal for this first step to work. No, I just said model a room. Hell, you don't even need textures. You can just use some wood, just Google tileable wood texture, slap that into a really base material, which you can learn how to do with the official Unreal Engine's documentation. And just get something together using one of your skills. And why? That's because none of those skills, animating or anything like that, were identified in step 1. We're focusing on something that you can tangibly believe that you could do. And we'll go back one, two. Where is that one? Trust in one's ability, right? That's what we're doing here. We're thinking of something that you believe you can do and then doing it. And of course, use a tutorial. Don't just open Unreal and be like, I don't know how to do this. Just look it up, say how to, or sorry, type UE4 space how to whatever, and I'm sure there's something on it. And after a while of testing these base skills, you may desire to add to it. So learn a complementary skill to build on what you've done. So for me, like I said, 3D was my thing, and I built out a room, and I wanted to move around it. So I learned C++ and blueprints. So you have 2 rooms modeled, and you figured out how to import the meshes into Unreal. You want to be able to walk around the scene. So yeah, learn basic programming, learn how to make a character, walk around that room. Like I said, there's many tutorials for this sort of thing. And remember, we aren't learning about animation or advanced movement like crouching or running. Don't even think about that stuff. Like I said, we're not building a game here. We're working on our skills, our base skills that we need to be everything that you see on the left side of this book, this page here. So now that we're walking around, maybe you need some shaders on the meshes, some basic lighting. So look up how to set up basic material shaders. Like I said, the Unreal, the official Unreal documentation, it outlines very basic how to set up these kind of things. And it goes over, you know, what the difference between a point light and a spotlight and a directional light is. And that's really all you need. It doesn't have to look pretty, because you can set that up and be like, oh, it's the shadows aren't crisp enough, or the shadows aren't dark enough, or maybe the shadows are too dark and I'm not getting enough bounce lighting if you're using Unreal Engine 5. You know, Lumen's not doing what is advertised in the videos when they announced it. How can I do that? So just, again, now that you have a very basic skill that is adding lights to a scene, look up how to get Lumen to have more bounce lighting. And sometimes these terms are a little bit difficult, but I can assure you that if you just poke around why shadows dark, why shadows dark Unreal 5, click around, read, like I said a couple slides ago, watch seminars, watch the Lumen seminar, read some articles, read some forum posts of some person whose grammar is not quite good, but you can make out what they're trying to say, and some replies that are definitely wrong, and then some other replies that are definitely correct, because, you know, every time you reply with the wrong answer, the correct answer is bound to come. Read forum posts, read the Unreal Answer Hub, read all that stuff. Take in as much information as you can on these skills when you're trying to learn them. Don't just follow one tutorial blindly, because I don't think you're going to retain a whole lot of information that way. You might get something together, but you're not going to be able to replicate it, and you're not going to be able to do the next step. So really learn what is, not only what is right, but what's wrong. Learn what's wrong. Learn what not to do. And look, once you've done that, once you've learned the complementary skill, you become a programmer, you become a modeler, you become a level designer, you become a texture designer, you become a shader author. You've already became quite a lot of these things just by learning these base skills. And now you've built a solid foundation of skills and how to learn them. And now the only thing left to do is to learn how to build on those skills. So I may have glossed over a little bit here, but after learning one complementary skill, now you want to learn another one. Maybe when the character steps on the floor, you need a stepping sound. So you go download a stepping sound off Zapsplat. Shout out Zapsplat, really good website for sound effects. I'm not sponsored. You can download some footstep sounds, find ones that you like, or ones that you don't like, doesn't matter, they can be placeholders. Find out if you want to use Unreal's audio engine, or if you want to move to something like Fmod or Wise. I use Fmod. Because it has really good integration with blueprints to control volume and whatever you want really with sounds through code. But you can use Unreal's own audio engine, just get footsteps in there. And then you can elaborate on that later, but just keep it simple. So as you build more and more of these complementary skills based on what you were initially able to do, you're expanding your newly acquired skills into an idea or concept. Now you have a game where you walk around, you know, a walking sim. If you added a jump at some point while learning these complementary skills, because that's what was in your mind's eye, now you have a platformer. You know, just put some pitfalls and put a kill zone in the bottom. Don't know how to make a kill zone? Again, just UE for how to make a kill zone. Item-based puzzle game. If one of your complementary skill adventures was to learn how to pick up items, well, good on you. That's a little bit more complicated, but if you found a good tutorial for that and you really read about other people's issues with doing it that certain way, maybe you learned a few different ways to do it, like line tracing or using a hitbox instead of a line trace for reading that an item is in front of you, and you chose the one that seemed most logical to you. Either way, you've been building skills. You haven't come up with a game concept at all yet. We're still just trying to make things using skills. So you're taking it step by step. Like I said, you need an interaction system. Learn only that. Don't learn how to build UI. Don't learn how to do any of that stuff. Just interact. Get the print hello out. Learn what, press E, and then that prints hello into the console. Great, that's an interaction system. That is literally an interaction system. You've done it. That's incredible. The congratulations from earlier, but like real. Need doors to rotate when you open them? Again, just learn only that. You don't need an animation like I've just shown in my game. I didn't need that. I did that much, much later. Doors just magically opened in my game for the longest time. And eventually I thought, I want to learn IK, which is where you can tell a hand or a foot or something like that where to go. So to actually touch the doorknob. I wanted to learn IK. I thought the door opening would be a good way to learn it. And that's the vessel I used to build on a skill, and it also made my game a little bit more interesting. The less expectation you put on yourself, especially in a like moment-to-moment basis, the more likely you'll see achievements left and right. If you come up with the idea to make it, like for example, if you just saw my door interaction system, and you're working on your own walking sim or your own horror game, and you're like, oh, I'm gonna make that same thing that Joy just showed me. All the power to you if you know how to do it. If you've never programmed doors rotating or opening before, and you want to do all of those animations and IK and everything right off the bat, you're going down the wrong path. It's going to be really overwhelming. Like I said, it took me a really long time to do that. And I don't say a really long time as in like work hours, like man hours. It took like thinking in the shower and debugging and like doing other things in between. Like I said, I had the door rotating magically for a while, and then I just left it like that. And I learned a little bit about IK. I didn't quite go straight for making it touch the doorknob, but I learned how to do IK. And then I went and did other things. I kept the cycle of learning skills going. I didn't just cut off a whole big chunk until I had a more solid foundation of things. So like I said, IK, that was a new skill for me. That was a new discipline. And I learned that very basic how to do it first. Okay, so let's move on to the next part. Now that we kind of know not to bite off more than we can chew, to really break down learning things, learning a discipline into parts, and that game development and solo development is a culmination of many, many different disciplines. It's not like, hold on, before we get into this, just, I don't know if some people think that game development is a skill in of itself, that when you say like, oh, I'm a game developer to somebody, that they think that you just make games, like that's the thing that you do. And it's actually, I was talking to my coworker about this earlier today, and he said it kind of reminds him of mathematicians, that knowing math isn't just a skill. It's a bunch of different skills. First, you learn 5 times 5, and then you can learn, you know, algebra and calculus and other advanced mathematics, and eventually, you can become a physicist. But physicism is not a skill. It's a bunch of different mathematics coming together, and theories and concepts that you have to learn. And it is very similar. I'm no physicist, I'm no rocket scientist, but it is a very similar looking mountain to climb. And one second. So if you can understand that you're going to be learning a bunch of different skills, and you're going to be doing it in a cyclical way where each skill gets leveled up a little bit by a little bit together, all together, as you do each mechanic, and we'll get into that during part 2, then you're golden. Let's move into actually doing it. So now that you've some learning and application experience, building some very basic stuff, it's not a game, but it resembles a game. It's time to think of something you can do with what you've been learning. Maybe the walking sim you made would be far more fun with enemies you must avoid, or some item collection and individual levels. Considering what you went through to get here, you should be able to make a good guess at what needs doing and how long that might take to learn. How long did it take you to learn these base things? Just elaborate on that. Multiply it. Scale it. And again, it's just an estimate, you know, just so that you're not being like, okay, well, I was able to make this little walking sim. Now I want 1 million players in an open world MMO. Everybody walking. It's like an open world MMO walking sim, and it's like, that's a huge jump that you've just done. You did not extrapolate, which is this fun little page here. You need to make a game design document. You need to write it down, and you can take what you've been building and how you've been building it, and then extrapolate that into other mechanics. I looked up the definition of extrapolate to make sure that's the right word, and it actually like surprised me how like perfect the definition was, so I just pasted it here. To extend the application of a method or conclusion to an unknown situation by assuming the existing trends will continue or similar methods will be applicable. That's what we're doing. We're taking those base skills that we learned and seeing what else we can do with them by adding a little bit more to it. I learned how to animate a door opening. Why can't I animate a chest opening? Why can't I animate drawers opening? I can do all of that now. I can make a really interesting interaction system after learning how to make a door. I have that power now. I know that I can do it. So once you do all that, okay, what else can I do? What else do I want to do? That's what the game design document is going to be. You're aiming to come up with ideas that you know for a fact are achievable. And I'm not going all the way back to one of the earlier slides, but remember, believing in your own ability. using the same methods that you use to learn the basics. So you want to include concrete guidelines with each mechanic and idea for the project on how it will be achieved. Part 2, execution, game design document. We're going to talk a little bit about this. There are plenty of resources for how to write a game design document, how to manage it, etc. Stage direction, show yours. Yes, must show your, oh, show mine. Got it. Hold on. Earlier me from today wants now me to show you my game design document. I did not open it. I forgot to do that. Give me 1 second. Truth be told, I actually haven't touched this in a really long time. This game design document. It is mostly up to date, but hold on. All right, here it is. This is my game design document. It is 52 pages long. Heading no longer exists. See, I haven't touched it in a while. I wrote a treatment or a small plan, what I want to make, what the following game design document is going to help me to make. And I wrote these really important questions. Is the goal capable of generating the necessary excitement to receive a grant and generate interest? That is my goal. I want to apply to Epic Mega Grants, or I want to look for funding in the future and work on this full-time. Who wants to play an investigational horror game which is inspired by Dark Souls and other things like Doom Metal, and what would be their core interests and desires in a game like that? And how would a game like this function in a way that is both fun and fair? So those are 3 questions I needed to answer in the course of this document. I defined a game loop, which I kind of went through as we were playing. I skipped some of the more in-depth stuff, but just because I haven't really announced much of that yet. But there it is out in the open now. We'll blur that in post. So talking about the differences between a non-linear world and an open world, I talked a little bit about the scope, focuses on puzzle solving, using your sight and hearing abilities, combat, beyond the scope of the prototype, things that I want to include, but I would need a little bit more time to include, so I'm not 100% sure if I'll do it. And it just kind of goes on and on and on. Things in red are stuff that I didn't implement, but this is actually, oh yeah, this is not implemented yet. I have not done this yet. I might not. Things in green I have implemented, or black. It's really long, and it includes everything I need, everything from pseudocode, which is like a brief outline on how I'm going to tackle a certain project, to other stuff. So, yeah. That being said, YouTube has a huge community of game design analysis essayists. Find some that you like to talk about, that talk about subjects that are relevant to what you want to make, and consume them. Learn. I like Adam Millard. He talks a lot about game design, like fun mechanics and stuff like that. Adam Millard, the game architect, I think, or architect of games or something. So I've learned a lot from him. And the entire game does not need to be mapped out in the GTD right off the bat before you start making it. In fact, I often write whole new sections as a form of pseudocode right before I implement it. Or I even write it after it's been implemented. And actually, my pseudocode is in a notepad file somewhere that I might not have even saved. It's not really important to me. What is important is that I have a record of the feature and mechanic written in the game design document at some point. So the game design document is a fluid document which changes over time depending on, maybe you try to implement it and it doesn't quite work, or it's too hard for you to do, so you dumb it down, you make it a little bit easier, more accessible to yourself and your skill level, and you go back to the game design document and you edit it. It's to aid in the organization of the many facets of game design, and there is no proper way to maintain one in my opinion, but for example, my current work, that my day job, we use Excel for our game design documents. I don't like Excel, I use Word. It's just so long as it does what it's supposed to do. So let's execute one example. I want to be able to pick up items and equip them. Requirements, you're going to need an interaction system. You're going to need item models and some effect to show you can interact with it. Inventory system, just storing an item after picking it up, like in an array, maybe. Equip and unequip system, some simple UI when you hit tab that shows all the saved items from the inventory system. An animation when you click one that spawns the item in your hand, maybe a sound. That sounds like a lot of work. That writing it out like that sounds like a lot of work. And I don't know how to do a lot of that. So let's break it down a little bit more. First things first, pressing E should print hello to the console. We talked about this interaction system. I know how to do that for making movement inputs and door interaction. I know how to do this. In fact, it's already implemented from when I was learning C++. And this is a made-up character. You understand. Okay, now it should do a line trace when I press E, according to this tutorial on interaction that I'm following. Okay, now it destroys any item, class, object that it hits. Okay, now it actually adds that item to an array as a name ID. Maybe you get it from a database file. Whatever the tutorial says. Okay, now that array is displayed when I press tab, it prints out the names on a little UI widget. Okay, now the mesh is spawned attached to my character when I click on that little name, and so on and so forth. You do these things one at a time. You can write it out like I have done on the left in your game design document, but then underneath each of these things, you should have pages elaborating on each little step. I need a line trace. I needed to destroy the item object. I needed to add it to an array. And you can write those things as each step comes up. You can write them out and then follow it step by step, like a guide that you've written for yourself, whatever works for you. But don't overplan and then not know how to break it down, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Plan in a way that you can break it down so that it's not overwhelming. And if you fail, if it's too hard to do, you can't find any proper tutorials or any help on it, if you get stuck, don't worry about it. Either modify it to be slightly different than what you were originally planning, because, skill issue. I don't animate humans. You don't have a full-fledged interaction system. It's fine. Don't get hung up on it. In fact, maybe just leave it for now and go work on something else. Maybe go work on the UI that you're going to need for later. It doesn't have to be done in any certain order. Don't let yourself just get discouraged, because it will click. Like I said, I had to do the door ajarring thing 2 or 3 times. I had to do my character's rig in Maya 2 or 3 times, and I had to redo all of the animations for it because I didn't want to do retargeting. It's okay. This will take time. Be patient. So yeah, so on and so forth. And when you get to the animation and sound effects parts that are needed for the equip and unequip system, time to learn some new skills. And learning a new skill is no longer a foreign concept to you. And now that we have the abstract basis for how we're going to learn, I'm going to run us through where to start with the following process of Unreal. I know it's nearing about an hour since we started, but I'm going to ask for just another 30 minutes of your time, and then I think that should be good. But the level design, modeling, that's one facet or discipline. Materials and texture authoring is another. Programming is another, and that can be C++ or Blueprints. UI is another discipline in itself, which combines programming and combines texture creation, but it's different enough that I've separated it. Animation is its own discipline, and you'll typically have 3D modelers who model the character, and they'll hand it off to an animator, but you're a solo dev, so you got to do both. Or you gotta purchase them. It's fine, you can purchase assets. If you don't want to learn animation, you can use the, what's it called? There's that popular animation kit that people use all the time. I forget what it's called. Advanced animation something. Or you can purchase models. One of my favorite games from 2021, Inscription. Awesome game. Almost all of the 3D models are purchased on Gumroad, I'm pretty sure. But Daniel Mullins, that's the thing. That's what he does. He makes it work. It's a great game. He edited some of them to fit, but you don't have to do all of this. But if you're just trying to learn, then why not give it a shot? AI and behavior trees is also another discipline, in my opinion. It's a kind of a totally different beast. And then sound. And there's more to it than this, but you'll find that you'll do at least something in each of these disciplines for each new mechanic that you add to your game, such as this one, pick up items and equip. All right, so I will open Unreal in a second, but just a few notes. It's worthwhile to learn optimization methods and debugging skills early as you go along. So optimization, when I say that, so when I say optimize it, the hell is that? Computer, show optimization tip. There we go. No casting to blueprints. Careful of draw calls. Stay off the tick as much as possible. Okay. I know what me from earlier today is trying to say. These are 3 things that gave me real grief that were not taught to me through tutorials. And in fact, I was taught to do these things in tutorials, and then I learned why not to do them. I will open Unreal in a second, and we will go over those 3 pitfalls. If you are really not into a discipline, there's no shame in purchasing or outsourcing assets. Just went over that. And remember to accept what you can achieve, something that you had in mind, and to adapt and move on to something else, like I said earlier, and keep the cycle between these disciplines fresh and balanced to avoid burnout or discouragement. So let's go into Unreal. Finally. Oh, look at all those errors. Thanks, Unreal 5, main dev branch, source build. Alright, so I've shown, I am in Unreal Engine 5. I've shown all of my data layers for the map, so it's the entire map being shown right now, but it is loaded dynamically at runtime using Unreal 5's data layers. The sun is hidden when you're no longer near windows, things like that. Draw calls. Use instanced static meshes when you can. These are not all individual meshes. Sorry, excuse me. There is one mesh here, and it is an instanced, as you can see. So this is all one draw call. Should be. I'm still not fully worked on the optimization for draw calls. I'm kind of in the middle of doing it, but a draw call essentially is, wait, what is it? Oh, I don't remember the thing. Oh, well, there's a stat that you can run that shows your draw calls, but if you were to Google that, I'm sure you'd figure it out. And essentially for every material that is being requested, every instance of every material that is being requested on your screen, that's an additional draw call for the GPU and GPU, I think. I want to say GPU. That can just really wreck your performance. The more things on screen, the worse your performance, obvious. But instant static meshes will drastically help you there. What was the other one? We'll do the casting blueprints last. Stay off the tick as much as possible. When you're working in blueprints, especially, but C++ too, you can try and avoid this. You have a tick. Try not to do too much on it. You can do really basic, like, interpolation and stuff, but I really even shouldn't be doing a whole lot of this all of the time. I should be using timers, or for this particular one. Oh no, yeah, okay, this one has, I have a branch here that it only runs its stuff when it's animating, and it's a really short animation. I think this is just a switch or something. Yeah, so the tick is very brief. It's not that complicated. This is not going to wreck my performance. But if you have, like, your character doing a ton of, like, checks on the tick, and if you're not sure, a tick happens every frame. So I'm calling these things every single frame. And if you're doing really complicated stuff, if it doesn't need to be checked every single frame, if you can check it like only when the player enters a certain space and just check it once and set it, and then when they leave the space, set it to back to whatever it was, that's going to be more ideal than checking every single frame if they're in the space. Are you in the space? Are you in the space? Are you in the space? Yes, you are. Okay, do the thing. Are you in the space? Are you in the space? No, you're not. Okay, and it's doing that every single frame. That's you don't need that. Just put a hitbox, and when they overlap, when they enter it, set the thing. Just try not to use the tick as much as possible. It'll save you optimization for the game thread. It'll save you optimization in down the line. You can run start if you want to check your game thread, you can actually run stat start file and stat stop file when you're in the game, when you're in play and editor. It doesn't work in here, but to my knowledge, but if you run stat start file and stat end file after 10 seconds, so let this run for 10 seconds and then run end file, and then you can actually open it in the I always forget where it is, the tools. See, that's why it's in the tools session front end, this one, and you can go to profiler, and you can load up that stat start file end file that you just ran. I've got one from a few days ago. And what you've just done, I ran it for 10 seconds, or actually this one I ran for much longer, for a few minutes, is you reading everything that's being called, every tick, to see what is requesting the most render time here in milliseconds. So that's how many frames or how many milliseconds per frame it takes to draw each frame. And you can figure out game thread, right? I can go here, and I can use this to figure out what is lagging my game so bad. And there's a really good article in the actual Unreal documentation that shows you how to use this. So Google around for how to use the session front end stat start file to optimize. It's very, very handy. And lastly, don't cast to blueprints. Why don't cast to blueprints? Because if you go here, if you open any blueprint, and you can cast to some blueprints, but don't cast a really big, hefty one. Don't cast to your character. Don't cast to your AI. Do not cast to your player controller. Go to find your blueprint in the browser, right click it, and go to size map. This is the disk size. That's not really important. Memory size, that's what we want. This particular thing is only 39 megabytes. Great. However, I begin play. Let me put a sequence in here. And let me branch. Condition is true, which means false will never ever fire. If I get the player character, which is, it has a skeletal mesh in it, it has materials in it, it has a ton of post-process materials in it. It's a really hefty thing. Not character object, not that. My character, my blueprint version of my character is hefty. See that? Tries to access object as a blueprint class. Character BP. It may be an instance of. So we're converting this. If you don't know what a cast does, we're converting the base character object class into character BP, my custom thing with all my functions, all my meshes that I need, all of that stuff. Everything that is referenced in here, we're forcing it to be that class type. And even though the branch is set to true permanently, this will never cast ever. If I compile and save, went from 32 megabytes to a 789 megabyte little switch, because we need to load in to memory at runtime this. Note, this will cause the blueprint to always be loaded, which can be expensive. Yes, very, very, very expensive. I'm loading in character, which loads in the controller, which these exist at the same time anyway, so it's not really a big deal. They're both loaded into memory at all times. But what if we're in a cinematic and my character BP is not loaded into memory, right? I've deleted the character and we're using just a animated skeletal mesh to save on memory, right? but this particular actor is in the level still. Well, guess what? Character is still being loaded into memory. I still have 767 megabytes wasted. I was using a lot of casts because I use a lot of tutorials and they tell you to cast. If you're casting to a C++ class, on the other hand, even if it's never called, look, not loaded into memory, only blueprints. See, I hover on this, it doesn't give me the note, this will be loaded into memory. It only gives you the note if you're casting to a blueprint. So yeah, be very careful with that. And I don't know if half the people in this watching this are like, yep, I learned about that, and the other half are shitting their pants right now because they have a ton of casts in their project. I don't know if that's the case. Sometimes it is, but I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news. If you're not doing this, congratulations. All right, so those are 3 things that you need to really be careful for that tutorials will tell you to do. These things that they will tell you to just spam static meshes everywhere and not care about draw calls. They will tell you to cast to blueprints, which if they're small enough, it's not a big performance hit. There's a lot of profiling you can do to figure out that. But if you're casting to the biggest thing in your game, your character, probably. I should be compartmentalizing, really. It's the character classes and mesh. Don't worry about that. Then yeah, these tutorials tell you to do these things with no regard for optimization, and it's going to come and bite you in the ass in the end, and it's better to be proactive. So lastly, I just wanted to look at a couple disciplines that I think are the most daunting, just to kind of give you an idea. And one of them is going to be materials. And there is, I believe, a material-related Wednesday Masterclass workshop, but so I'm not going to get too into depth into materials themselves. But I will show you very quickly one of my main master materials. So I made my own master material, which does a ton of things, and I can toggle these things on and off. I can say like use object normal, or use an object mask texture, which is like for dirt. So for simple things like just a wooden wall, I have all those things off, so it's relatively cheap. And yeah, it took me a long time to learn materials to the point where I could make something like this. And when it finally made sense to me, when it finally clicked, is when I started learning what the math expressions all mean. And this page, let me switch over to this. The math expressions page on the documentation, again, yes, the documentation, way better than tutorials a lot of the time. This explains what every single math expression does. And it might not make a whole lot of sense right off the bat why you would need to use some of these things, but then when you go and look at a tutorial or you copy somebody's graph and you see somebody using clamp, well, now you know what clamp does. It stops something from going over the value of 1 or under the value of 0, or whatever you have the min-max set to, right? So if you want to keep something in the range to 0 to 1, you need to use clamp. Of course, if you never read this, if you never read what clamp does, you would never know to do that, or when you go to put it into a graph and you're following a tutorial, you'd have no idea what it's doing, or why you'd want to do that. So as you can see, it is stopping this 0 to 1 gradient from going 0 to 1. It's only going 2 to 7. And the most time I use clamp is when I'm going into a LIRP, a linear interpolation. Because this requires you to go from 0 to 1. And if you have something that can go way beyond 1, but you just want it to stop there, you put a clamp before the linear interpolate to make sure it doesn't go over 1, or else this is going to start looking real weird. So again, these are just things you learn by playing around, following, like look at this. Do what they've done here. Just look at these and do what they've done, and then you can right click on this and start previewing the node. Okay, right? What happens when I add 1? turns white, right? Cool. So if you know what these nodes are doing, then you'd know exactly what I just saw happen. Well, maybe if I were to preview these ones as well, but yeah, this is the Y for the UV. So the V, I guess. If you learn what each individual node here is doing by reading the math expressions, and you learn about texture coordinates and these things, if you follow a basic tutorial for how to make a shader, any kind of shader, it doesn't matter, follow a basic tutorial and then look at the nodes that they use and see the ones, if you do enough tutorials, you'll start seeing lerp appears a lot of times, clamp appears, multiply appears a lot of times. Why? Learn about those nodes in particular. Learn those ones, because those are the ones you need to know how to use. And play around with it. Think up something you want to make and try and make it. Animating is very similar. You're going to learn, when you go to try and do animation for the first time, animation blueprints. You're going to learn blends. You're going to learn blending by bone. You're going to learn how to use state machines. Those are important. And montages. So anim sequences are when you import the animation and you have to make it into a montage when you want it to play just that animation as it is. So we saw our guy get up in the middle of combat, so that's just playing this montage. So, forget his name. Oh shoot, was I showing, okay, hold on, that's okay. I forgot to switch over to Unreal. Okay, so we saw this animation, sorry, you didn't miss much, you just missed this, and you missed, me showing my small little state machine here. You did not miss much. I did show a little bit of my master graph again when I was talking about previewing. So sorry about that, but you didn't really miss much. I didn't choose the best nodes to preview. But so going back to talking about animation and talking about VFX, I have a channel to recommend if you're just getting into VFX, like shaders and animation. This guy has helped me a great deal. Which one's OBS? This guy. Big shout out to this channel. He covers so many things very concisely. Yeah. And he also talks about not casting the blueprints. In some videos he talks about all those things. So yeah, big ups this guy. So animations, if they seem daunting at first, read the documentation on them for Unreal, watch a few YouTube videos, and just try and keep it simple. Like I said, step by step. Learn how to get a montage playing. Learn how to blend poses between running and not running. There's a tutorial on just that. Again, learn just that. And blueprints, very similar to what I was going on about with materials, is learn the basic nodes that you see appear in tutorials. If you see branch a lot, learn what branch does. If you see sequence a lot, learn what that does. And again, to learn that, just read the documentation in the Unreal documentation. It explains it very concisely. You'll learn the concept behind it, and also learn coding concepts, like the general concepts, like what is an if branch, you know. Things like that. It might not directly apply to Unreal, but learning concepts is very important for coding. That's pretty much it that I wanted to go over. I could go over UI. Again, UI is just going to be more programming. If you learn programming and you learn textures, you can do UI. You can follow a tutorial on UI. It won't be a big deal. AI and behavior trees is a little bit more off the beaten path, but that also comes from programming. So I'd say when you're starting out, if you learn the material editor and you learn level design and you learn lighting and you learn a little bit of blueprints or C++, you can extrapolate. There's that word again. And you can learn all of the other things. Believe in yourself, honestly. So that brings my presentation to a close, I think. I kind of running out of time there at the end, but that's okay. I think you get the point.
Yeah, thanks so much for that.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah.
So
I think, yeah. Getting all of that information into an hour and 20 is amazing. So yeah, really, really appreciate that. It's such an awesome talk. I think the idea of not just grabbing tutorials bit by bit and like looking into the documentation, looking at things in basic terms to really, really understand that stuff. I think that's such a key thing.
Yeah, you want to cross-reference a lot of stuff, right? That's why I said learn a few different ways to do interaction, for example.
Yeah. See, this kind of brings up something for me is that have you ever had to kind of like step back a few times, take a few steps back at one point and kind of like you'd learned something, but maybe it wasn't exactly the right way to do it?
Absolutely. The door animations. I was doing a timeline in the door, and I learned timelines aren't the best performance-wise, and that you could just do it on the tick, like I showed you with the switch, with like a branch and a boolean, and just use the ease function. And then I did that, so that was my second iteration. And then I realized for the ajarring the door, like peeking through, I need to control it based on the animation that's playing. So I need the character to send a like animation percentage thing, like I guess alpha or float to the door. So I had to say, okay, door, stop using your own. You need to get the animation information from whoever's interacting with you. So I had to do the door 3 times. Each one was okay for what it was at the point, and then when I got around to adding in the next thing, I realized that it didn't quite work like that. And so that might have been poor planning on my part, or just that's just the way I make it, right? So I don't mind redoing things. You learn.
Definitely. And with that, have you ever felt like how do you go about cleaning up the project after you've done that? Like often feels like a teetering tower project.
I guess okay. So like I said, if I programmed the door one way, it's written in the game design document. So when I go to change it, the cleanup process is me overwriting the game design document, erasing that. And as I erase those things, I erase it from Unreal as well. And sure, there is a moment, a kind of a crossfade between what I'm about to do with the door and what was already implemented, where things get a little bit messy, and I leave functions there for a little while, but I set them as deprecated, and I set them as I renamed them to say obsolete. Sorry about that. I renamed them to say obsolete at the beginning, so it's like underbar obsolete underbar whatever the function name was, and then later I right click on them. I can quickly show. Real handy if you don't know this. You can just right click on any, like, let's say I know I don't need anim% anymore, so I try my best to delete it. And I've fully implemented the whole new thing. This is no longer needed now. I have a whole new thing. I just go find references. Okay. So find it here, delete this. Here, delete that. Here, delete that. And maybe none of this is connected to the tick anymore. Maybe I've like moved it off to the side, so I can just select it all and delete it. But I do leave it there momentarily while I work on the new version of it. Does that answer? Oh, and one more thing. When you do this, you may have deleted it all here, but just click that thing, and it'll search for anything else, any other classes that have referenced that. Maybe you're casting to this somewhere else, stuff like that, and they'll appear here, as you can see. I don't have any other classes referencing this, luckily, though. So you have to go over there and delete those references as well before you can safely delete the variable from here without it going, this is in use. This will not appear if you did that correctly.
Yeah.
Yes, refactoring is fun. Not fun.
Yeah, I love that. I guess that also comes into like doing a lot of the design in the first stage and then learning about optimizing later on. I guess there's a lot of
prototyping. Yeah, prototyping will you'll have to rework quite a lot, and that's okay. You can work in blueprints and then refactor into C++. I'm actually in the process of doing that, so nothing wrong with that.
One thing that really caught my eye, actually, looking back a little bit, was your kind of fear and phobia mechanics. I thought that was really, really nice. How it like really plays into like the psychology of the person is reshaping the area. Is that something that kind of came about as this kind of back and forth between game dev and story, or is it something you really had planned out from the start?
What did I have planned? Well, like I said, at the very start, I had nothing planned. There was not going to be even enemies for a little while. It was going to be a puzzle game. And then I was like, but if I make a puzzle game, I'm not going to learn how to do enemies, and I'm only doing this to learn. So I wanted to learn how to do enemies, so now there's enemies. And that's something I didn't talk really about, and I kind of might go off on a tangent here, but I'll keep it real short. Scope creep is real, and if you're not careful about just adding more and more and more and more features, your game will never be finished. So I think I did plan to have some sort of insanity mechanic, but I didn't want it to be like generic insanity. I wanted it to be more like reality altering, and through both you know, your character's mental health and also their substances that they take, like consumables. And I went through a few different iterations on paper, and I never actually implemented it until very recently. So what you saw there with the shadow person and everything is one of the vertical slice for that, and I have a bunch more planned. Now that I know how to do just that one, now I have a bunch more planned based off of that experience on how to make the nyctophobia one. So yeah, it took a lot of back and forth between working on the setting and the story and the other mechanics until I landed on one that made sense both skill-wise, that I knew how to do, and also that would fit in with the game loop.
Yeah, really cool. And you said you've been doing it since 2021. Is that right? Is that fairly intensively the whole time, or?
I think 2020 is when I started programming the game. I had like really actually writing mechanics in the game design document saying like, oh, I want item collection, interaction, whatever, and like, yeah, pretty intensively. But you know, there's been moments where I work on it way more, and I take breaks every now and then. I take like a few weeks off, and I come back to it. I work full time, and I'm a father as of January. And so, you know, I got a lot to deal with. Thank you. I've got a lot to deal with, of course, but I still find time to work on it quite often. And like I said, it is my goal to work on it full time. I could not estimate the amount of hours I put into this, and I don't wish to as well.
That is amazing that you're juggling all of that and still like having so much creative output. Really, really cool. One last thing I wanted to, well, actually, maybe two things. For one, someone commented on the art style and said it was really nice and cohesive. I know you have like quite an interesting story of how the art style came about.
I do. Hold on. Am I showing Unreal still? Okay, I'll show you the very first mesh that was in this art style. This one. This guy. The material was a little bit different, but and also thank you to commenter who commented on the art style. I didn't want to do PBR because like physically based, I don't care to remember what that means. Like having specular, metallic, all that kind of stuff. I do use Substance Designer still. I still like use the tools. I just use them in a different way. And I wanted, it didn't quite look right like this. I was like, okay, well, you need a little bit of edge wear, or I need to make this even lower poly. Like I'm in kind of like a uncanny valley here. I'm missing something. So I think I opened Substance Painter and I started painting worn edges on because I didn't know how to do curvature. I didn't know how to bake out curvature. I didn't know how to bake out edges, edge detection and stuff like that from the model. I also didn't have like high poly or anything like that, and I don't like doing high poly. I only really do low poly. Not until recently, at least. And as I was painting on these edges, I was like, okay, what if I just paint the whole line across, the white line, paint the whole line across, all of the hard edges here, and then I take an eraser and I kind of like lightly dust it to make it look worn. And while I was doing that, I ended up drawing this, and I was like, this is kind of dope, actually. Like, I don't know what it is, but it looks like cartoony a little bit without being your typical like cell shader. I didn't know how to do cell shaders, so I didn't particularly want to learn it. I thought this looked cool, so I did it for more. I think this was the next one I did. Yeah, that's essentially how I came up with the outlined art style. So yeah, I draw all of these on myself in Substance Painter. I literally open up the mesh. Looks like that. I take a white brush and I just paint on all of these lines. It's time consuming. It's meditative. I listen to music. It's a good time, actually.
Yeah, nice to have like a bit of a repetitive task when you're spending so much time like learning and...
Yeah, it's nice to take a break. And then when I finally get these lines in engine on the object, it's quite rewarding.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's quite interesting you're saying about like not using elements of PBR materials like metallic, or like you say you don't use like specular as well. It's like that's quite nice to like have those limitations in the whole game. That will also make it feel a bit more cohesive art style wise.
Yeah, that's another thing I didn't really touch on, is consistency. It is kind of implied, but just be consistent. Make an art, if you're working on your art style, make an art style that you know you can replicate, that you know you can do in a timely manner. I could have learned a little bit more about PBR, and I know how to make curvature and stuff now, and edge detection and edge wear and stuff. I know how to do it now. I learned it at some point, but so that I could adapt it to work for my art style. But it's about being consistent. I could not do that for this entire scene. It would take way too long. So I wanted to be consistent, so I made a very simple art style that I could replicate over and over and over for many different scenes. And same with the whole doll thing, right? So yeah, that's how I came up with this kind of playhouse, cartoony kind of look. Shout out Theodore Jericho.
I was also asked about your HUD UI. It's a really nice UI, and I think you had some work that went into that.
Sure. Thank you. Someone said what?
Why do you hate Unity?
Why do I hate Unity?
I don't know if you mentioned that you hate it, but
I don't know if I said hate. I probably did. I have no reason to hate it. I just don't like it. I have no reason, and no comment, honestly. I like Unreal. I've always just liked Unreal. I had to use Unity for a project for the remake, the HD remake of the Silver Case by Grasshopper Manufacturer. If anybody's a Suda 51 fan here, I worked on the remake as in a company contracted by Grasshopper. And we did it in Unity, and I found it the most frustrating thing ever. Just clunky. But this was a long time ago. This was 2015, so I don't know if Unity's probably gotten better since then. UI? Okay, cool. Yeah, it's my UI. It's gone through a lot of iterations. I've gotten some feedback from friends. Mechanics that I added in later on had to find a place, like the mental health thing. I don't really remember what was here, but yeah. Yeah, thanks for the comment on the UI. Was there a question regarding it, or just?
They just said they're kind of interested in it. I guess. How do you get the kind of dynamic page turning part of it as well?
The book. For the book. That's a skeletal mesh. The pages are skeletal meshes, and the actual cover is a skeletal mesh. And this took me a goddamn long time. This is probably one of the most complicated things I've done for this game. And I thought the book, you're going to be opening it so much looking for the scenes, which regrettably I didn't have time to show you the whole mechanic for investigation. It's the core gameplay loop. But follow the Twitter and YouTube, and maybe you'll find out eventually when I post a video on it. The book is a character. You're looking at it so much, it is a character. I couldn't just have a UI. It had to be real. And that was inspired by Obra Dinn. I love Obra Dinn, and you're in the journal so much in that game that he animated the flipping pages, and I thought that brought the book to life. It made it feel like another character. So yeah, this thing is a skeletal mesh, and I stepped through the animation of the spine flipping from left to right as you go through the percentage of pages. So it could be 25, 30, 40 pages. It will adapt because it's just reading how many pages you flip through, converting that to a percent, and then stepping through the, I guess, like Z shape to the reverse Z shape that books do as you flip through them, the spine. And the pages themselves just have a flipping animation. I don't know. Oh, hold on. I'm showing you my desktop. You should actually be able to see me. That's not good. There we go. Okay. It's going to be a little bit laggy. Sorry about that. So yeah, it's just one animation, and like stop it. And do that. It's just one animation going back and forth. As you can see, the book is moving. Cover, like I told you, it's just interpolating through one animation's position, depending on the percentage of pages that you're going through. And then I have a widget which is mapped to the page that you can click, as you can see. Hold on. You can click on this one. So this is, in order for it to deform with the page, I had to use a 3D widget, which is then projected onto the skeletal mesh. That was really difficult, but it is possible, apparently. I was, yeah. It is, thank you. Yeah. And I was almost ready to give up on the deformation of the UI widget, the 3D widget, because it just was not working. I was just going to have it float here and then fade out when you click the button, and the blank page would turn. And you fade in right here, and it was like that for a while. And then I thought, you know, I'm going to take a look at those 3D widgets again. I learned a bunch of other stuff in Unreal since the last time I tried this, and I figured it out finally. So, yeah.
Really, really nice. Yeah, if anyone else has got any questions, please do comment in. But I'm pretty much out. Oh, I did think it was really interesting hearing you talk about Fmod. That sounded like such a cool way to get really in-depth kind of sound design elements. Don't know if you could.
Oh yeah, I didn't talk about my dynamic sound a whole lot. There's these 5 nodes here, the radiator, when I was talking about people using headphones should be able to hear it. These 5 nodes, as you can see, install radiator audio, I actually reduced it to 3 because it's doing a line trace every, not every frame, but it's a short-ish timer. It was every frame, and that was just way too costly, So this audio occluder sits, it's like a harness that sits on the player character, and every 0.15 seconds it checks for all registered occluders, and so those these audio will on spawn register to this occluder, and I don't remember how I do it. I might be using a message bus, so you can Handler, I think that's what I called it. Yeah, I have this which sits on the game state, and so anybody who wants to send a message to anybody else who's listening can cast to this class, and casting to this is fine. It's a blueprint, sure, but it is just all dispatches, and so those occluders probably just say, hey, I'm on occluded audio, I want to register to the harness on the player, and they send their information to one of these events in the dispatch, and the player character is has bound to this event. So whenever one of these spawns, like whenever you go to a new area and a new sound happens, or spawns, it calls this dispatcher, the player character receives it, it registers that to its audio occluder, which then includes it in the, where the hell did it go? It then includes it in the occluded audio array, so which is 4 loops every 0.15 seconds, and it checks whether or not these 3 nodes, used to be 5, but that was unneeded, it was too much memory per frame. It does a line trace from the character's head to these, so if I'm over here, I'm only going to be seeing one of them. From here, I'll see 2 of them. From here, I'll see all of them, and depending on 1, 2, or 3 being covered, it will send to fmod a parameter, which I just call occlusion amount, and it's just a 5 integer parameter. At 0, the sound is fully unmuffled, so no low pass filter, no high cut, and if I cover a 1, that int goes up to 2, or it used to be, like I said, it used to be 5, so it would have been cover 1, the int goes up to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that's just a roll off of like a muffling effect. So for every sound effect which I want to be occluded, I just give it a quick roll off effect on the global parameter occluded amount, or the shared parameter. So yeah, that's essentially how that system works. It was inspired by I was looking at how to do custom occlusion, dynamic occlusion, because I wanted it so that when you open a door, if a sound on the other side, it becomes gradually unoccluded, or when you turn a corner or something like that, like you hear footsteps muffled in the background, or you hear talking in another room and it's all muffled, or something like that, right? So I was kind of looking it up, and somebody had a really complicated system for this, like a really complicated one. So I dumbed it down, and I kind of came up with my own idea inspired by that, by using nodes and a harness that scans for them. And I streamlined it and optimized it. So yeah, that was one of the first things I ever did for this game, actually. One of the first mechanics. Yeah, it was just line traces. It wasn't a complicated code thing to learn, so. And I've used the harness and node thing in many other mechanics since then. That learning to put a harness on the character and things that register via a global event bus, whoops, like this, and unregister themselves on death. When I learned that, yeah, I use harnesses for so many things now, like actor components and stuff like that, which are added to the character. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, that's a really cool way to get around that kind of casting. You're just casting to one thing that's sort of got a storage of different event dispatches. Yeah.
Just don't send like really specific types. Just send bools, floats, enums, and you're good to go. Don't send the character blueprint, or else everything that is casting to this will then inherit that reference as well. So yeah,
awesome. Yeah, I'm pretty much out of questions, and yeah, I think you've imparted an amazing amount of knowledge in this session. So if you're happy to end here, I'm happy to end here.
Yeah, I think thank you for bringing up a few things at the end there that I wanted to get into but totally forgot or glossed over. So I think that about does it.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much again. And everyone, if you want to see Joy's journey, they've got these links here to follow. There's people on the YouTube saying thanks. So yeah.
Cool. Thank you for tuning in.
And obviously, everyone, you can catch the re-upload. I'll get that super high quality up as soon as possible. And yeah, I just think that's been an amazing stream. Thanks so much, Joy.
Thank you for having me.
No problems. And yeah, catch you all on the next masterclass. We've got an awesome one coming up in the next couple of weeks. So yeah, thanks all who tuned in.
I'll be here.
Cheers, guys.